Have you heard the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover? But that's what people do, right? We judge everything by outward appearances. In my experience, a great album cover can make or break the decision on whether I buy an album. So go on a journey with me as we look at some great album cover designs and talk about why I believe that you need a personal designer for your album artwork. This is Judged by the Cover. All right, and welcome to the Judged by the Cover podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Phil.
And we have another fun episode for you guys today. But first, we want to talk about a really cool concert we went and saw last week. Or it was the week before.
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way.
Recent.
Yeah. So first off, I want to just give a shout out to The Signal, which is a really cool venue here in Chattanooga. They bring in a lot of cool artists, and they bring in like a wide array of artists and stuff like that too. But just a shout out to them because they made a situation right that they didn't have to. And we got to see a really cool show because of it. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Signal.
And if you are in the Chattanooga area or don't mind traveling to see a concert, I highly recommend checking something out at The Signal. But, man, we got to see a couple of really awesome bands, but the headliner was none other than Scott Stapp, lead singer for Creed, for those who may not know that name by reference. And, man, I don't know what year it is. We've got Creed going on tour. We've got new music from Linkin Park. Is this like 2004? What year is this?
The 90s resurgence. I think people are just like, you like to go back in time. It's kind of like when an old car turns 20 years old. You're like, oh, it's a classic now. So I really do think like that's what's going on with the 90s. You look back at these songs, especially like Creed songs, and you're just like, wow, they're really good. Like I was telling Josh, the Creed song Arms Wide Open, that came on the radio right when my wife told me we were having a baby girl. I was pulled over on the side of the road and she called me on my little Nokia flip phone. I was out in LA and she was still in New York. She's like, Phil, we're going to have a baby girl. And then with arms wide open, it came on the radio, like on cue. Yeah. So I'm like a forever now Creed fan because of that cool moment. It's a beautiful song. But I think people love like going back to those songs.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that it kind of makes me think like there's all these like legacy bands. You think like Def Leppard, Kiss, stuff like that, reuniting, going on tour. Like, is this my generation's Kiss and Def Leppard and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, could be. What?
I had that like realization the other morning. I was just like, oh my gosh, am I getting old enough that I have bands that are becoming those legacy bands?
Yeah. Well, how about the guy, and I forget the artist's name, who covered the Tracy Chapman song Fast Car?
Luke Combs.
Yep. Same thing. Like he said that his dad gave him the cassette, like his cassette of Tracy Chapman, and he listened to that cassette, and that's when he fell in love with Fast Car. And then fast forward probably 30 years later, or was it 33 years?
Yeah, something like that.
He covered it, and it's, again, what a great moment with the two of them on stage.
Yeah. So it was really cool. I'm just a fan of catching live music, and never, in my dreams would I thought that, get to see Scott Stapp and then like Creed actually come back together. And funny side note on that, I had to take a quick trip to Florida to deliver a truck and come back. So I decided to just like listen to the full Creed catalog.
Oh, wow.
Which is just 4 albums. So it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
But I totally forgot there was an album, and I think it came out in like 2012. 2011, 2012. I would call myself a pretty big Creed fan.
Okay.
But I had forgot this album even existed. And there were some jams on there.
Yeah.
I was actually, it's really cool to like get to like reintroduce yourself to a band that you've always loved.
Fun, man. Get your memory lane, man. You go, those songs take you back to like a particular moment.
Yeah. So really cool. And I totally forgot. We didn't even tell you like what we're what we're talking about today.
No, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So we are talking about photos on album covers, and just looking at how you can do it creatively. And then we are going to be reintroducing a segment called Near Miss, where we get to talk about things that are maybe not very well designed.
Yeah.
And I've got a fun little rant about a certain genre of music that is near and dear to my heart, and maybe their poor use of photos on album covers.
Yeah.
But before we get too far, let's take a quick second and hear from our show sponsors.
Oh, yes.
Did you know that Judged by the Cover is brought to you by JW Creates? JW Creates is your graphic design source, specializing in cover art design, logos, websites, and so much more. As a musician myself, I fell in love with album covers, and this fueled a passion to visually tell stories and promote branding through the art of graphic design. To learn more, see some of my work, or if you're interested in connecting with me, go to jwcreates.com. Judged by the Cover is proud to be a part of the Pod Nougat Network. If you are a fellow podcaster looking for a partner to help give you the tools to make your show the best it can be, or just interested in connecting with other podcasters in the Chattanooga area, make sure to follow Pod Nougat Network on Facebook and Instagram, or learn more at chatpod.com. So that's chat with 2 T's, pod.com. All right, welcome back. So today we are talking photos on album covers, and we're not talking specifically any one album. We're going to be talking about a few. Both of us have brought some examples, I would say, to the table, but mine are just going to be showing up via hopefully the magic of editing on the screen. But Phil does have some examples that he'll be talking about. But a little selfless shame promotion for my buddy Phil. Right here, I've got an example of this is actually for a single. It's called The Dose by the man himself, Phil Highland. And this is just an example of a cover that we designed that is technically a photo of photos.
Yeah.
And this is just one of those where I may get this wrong, so you may have to clear it up for me. But when you sent this to me, and when we were talking about the cover for this song, it was written during this time period when you guys got these photos, correct? Right. And the song is not exactly about Robin, right, but she is kind of the main inspiration for the song. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so it was just these photos where it has you two during that time period, and it just captures a moment. And I think that's the thing that photos can do, is it captures a moment, or it captures your attention towards something. And there's a lot of examples of it done really well, but there's also a lot of examples of it maybe not done well at all.
Right.
And that's just kind of what we wanted to talk about today.
And also, like, this is from the 90s, so I think a lot of like what we've been chatting about, or artists we're seeing again, like Scott Stapp at the Signal, the artist from Creed, these are all 90s acts. And I was doing this band in New York City in the 90s, so I don't know, man, here we are, we're talking about a lot of 90s art, and it was a weird time for fashion, and it was, like, I think my kids are wearing mom jeans now, and, everyone looks like they're on the set of Friends or something.
It just goes, like a vicious circle, isn't it?
But it's kind of cool. Like, it's fun. I'm like, wow, okay, I'm already that old where we're nostalgic about the 90s.
Yeah, right. So, photos on album covers. So I figured a kind of a good place to start would be to give you an example of an album cover with a photo that I find very intriguing. I know that there's a lot of different uses and why people use photos, and we'll probably get into that a little bit. Sometimes it's like it's a photo of the artist because like that's their brand. They're the brand, I guess. What I wanted to bring up as an example is an album cover by the band The Architects, and it's the album For Those That Wish to Exist. So when I'm kind of tired of the music that I listen to normally, I turn to a couple different sources to just discover new music, and one of those is Pandora. And one of my
Why Pandora? I'm just curious.
It's easy. I've used Pandora for over a decade or so.
Okay.
But it's just it's a good place where that's different from my normal. I use Apple Music for everything,
Right.
and Apple has some good tools that help with music discovery. But sometimes when I need to like break out of that rut and try to find something different, I'll turn to Pandora. So there's a station called New Rock, and every year they're updating it with albums and songs that come out that year. And so I was listening to this station, and this song came on, and for one, I musically I really love this album, and we might dive into a little bit of like what the album's about and stuff like that, but also the album cover. So I've sent this to Phil, so I think Phil has seen it, but we're gonna just turn it around so we can both look at it. So the album cover itself it's a really dark and moody image, which I love just to begin with. But the setting is in a cathedral, kind of like a old church,
old Catholic
sanctuary.
church. It looks like
And then you've got some light coming through like a side window, and in the center of the room is this astronaut. It's this guy, in this full astronaut suit, and he just looks so out of place. And I kind of love this like tension, like why is he there?
Yeah.
And it just gives you these feelings of like maybe not feeling like you belong, or exploration and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just this powerful imagery, and the musically it's very heavy metal, but they deal with a lot of like the lyrics are very talking about politics and not taking care of the earth, and so it, and like all that kind of fun stuff.
But, I also got a sense of discovery with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like here's this astronaut. What do astronauts do? They go a great distance to explore because they're curious, or they feel like they're being called.
Yeah.
And that's the sense I get. I think this composition is really like, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So that's 100%. That's the reason why I went and downloaded the album, listened to the full album, and now I'm just a fan of the band and what they're putting out. But it was this creative use of a photo on the album cover.
And then on the album cover, is there like their logo and stuff, or where is this stripped out?
It's just this is
that's
it.
That's crazy. Like how would I know? So if I'm in a record store, that's all I see right out of the gate.
Yeah. And some of it is, at this point they've got a big enough following, so they don't necessarily maybe need that name recognition. But I think it's also that they know, and whoever designed this, and I think I've actually got that information. We'll cover that here in a second. That they knew that this was powerful enough that this is going to grab someone's attention.
100%.
Yeah. And so I think that's one way that photos can be used really well as an album cover. A lot of times people will pick a photo that either is something that they enjoy, and I think Phil may have a couple examples of that in his pile, or just like a photo of themselves, maybe without thinking like, does this speak to the music? Does this speak to the album? Does this speak to like who I'm trying to connect with?
I think it's such a key moment for a recording artist to try really hard to get the image right. And even the font and all of the graphics that go alongside with, designing an album cover, inserts, back cover, everything, sleeve, even the sticker on the vinyl in the center, the cutout and all that. Because it's really, what is a recording? The band goes into the studio. It's a recording. It's a record of that moment.
Yeah.
And your photo should really be as important as the songs.
Yeah.
And to really put that thought in. So, there are a couple of the near misses I'll show, one or two, are kind of like, really? Is that really the best you had?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's key. Like, I see, you turn me on. You're the reason I listen to new music, because you turn me on to this stuff. Now I'm curious.
Yeah.
So that's what I think's cool, because I don't do Pandora.
You don't have to. There's lots of other good resources out there. But
when I was a kid, it was like my Pandora was, we'd go to the music store. I'd have $10 in my pocket from cutting grass earlier that morning. And whatever the owner of Plan 9 Records and Tapes in Richmond, Virginia had on, he'd be playing stuff like, hey, I want the kids to listen to this. And be like, dude, what's that playing right now? And like, oh, that's U2, like their first album, to date myself.
Yeah.
But that's how we found out about new music, or they had the posters all up in the big glass windows when you walked
Yeah.
in. So before you went
Yeah.
in, you're kind of like that kid looking at the glass windows, and you got your $10 in your pocket, and you're like, oh wow, that looks really cool. It's the Go-Go's.
Yeah. So, as an artist yourself, Phil, what's your perspective on this as far as, using photography on your singles or
Yeah.
albums and stuff like that?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, obviously I love the songwriting process because there's imagery in my head, like the dose. I've got I always come up after I write the song, I come up with these, multi-million-dollar music video budgets, so they'll never happen.
Right.
But, I have all this cool imagery in my head, but I really like to partner with a photographer and a graphic designer and just kind of let them listen to it. And I really tend to just let go and be like, what do you have? I already know the song and I kind of want a fresh idea anyway. So that's exciting for me, working with a photographer and just be like, what are you going to come up with? I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Yeah. So I personally, when I'm looking at album art and covers and stuff like that, I'm looking for that creative take.
Yeah.
And it's probably it's the designer in me, right?
Yeah. I love that.
And some of it's maybe looking for that inspiration and stuff like that too. But let's just maybe talk about a couple of other ways that people do use photos. So one is personal brand. So I know that there's a lot of artists, and this feels really maybe sexist to say, so I apologize if I offend anybody, but especially female artists. Female artists, their image tends to be their brand, right?
Correct.
Now, that's not across the board, but I think just in general, sex sells, right?
Yeah, but I think also women, we in a good way, we celebrate the beauty of women, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And women are beautiful, and an artist that wants to, celebrate that part of herself. That's where look at Tina Turner. When you think of Tina Turner, what do we think about? Beautiful hair.
Yeah.
Beautiful woman, and always fit. Like Tina Turner, the girl can dance. And what an artist. I was doing a deep dive into Tina Turner. My daughter was singing a Tina Turner cover at an event, and I'm just like, may she rest in peace. She's no longer with us, but what a great artist, and who really used her power and her beauty. Look at any Tina Turner cover art. It's her, man. She was photographed by Herb Ritts. Herb Ritts is one of the most famous portrait photographers from the 1990s.
Come on. That's why I brought this man on. I love it. Yeah, no, that's a great example. That's one I wouldn't would have come to.
Well, and you who is a woman artist that you really like, Josh?
It's funny because before we started, we were talking about, and some of it was in prep for the near miss segment, but this one I actually have.
There's nothing near miss about this one.
I actually have one here. So this actually dates back to my boyhood days. I had the biggest crush on Shania Twain.
Put her up here.
So this album, Up, and what year did this come out? I want to say this was
Who cares? It's great.
2002.
2002?
That's what it says on the back here. Copyright 2002.
Get out of here.
So Shania Twain, Up, and I didn't even, this was a real poppy kind of album. It was barely country. If you think of maybe Taylor Swift right before she made the jump into pop, that's kind of what this was. But
she paved the way for Taylor Smith.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, she was one of those artists that made that jump from
Taylor Swift. I just said Taylor Smith. I'm old, man. Doesn't matter. Taylor Smith.
But yeah, this is another example of where, her beauty, who she is, was kind of the branding for this album.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, yeah.
And so yeah, I think sometimes that portraits of the artists, and I think there are really cool and creative ways to do portraits as well for cover art. And some of that's going to come down to what the designer does with it. Because if you're just taking a photo, photographer that has a really great eye can get a really cool shot for for just like a portrait or something like
Right.
that on a cover. But what happens, in the design phase, I think will have a big impact on whether that just looks like a senior photo, or if it looks, like actually creative and something that serves the song and the album.
And don't forget also that any photographer worth their salt does or has a gift to really work with the artist or the subject to bring out these really evocative emotions. So if you've ever, I was a photographic assistant in New York City, and I worked on a bunch of shoots, and I saw that a lot where the photographer is such a pro and they can get some kind of emotion out of whether it's Christina Aguilera or Lemmy from Motorhead. They get some kind of cool emotion and they capture that.
Yeah. I think one direction that we can take this, and we're back from our little break there.
Oh, we're back.
I think one direction that this kind of takes us is the fact that sometimes I think, and I think you kind of shared this a little bit, where you, as the artist, have an idea like, ooh, this is the direction. But I think when you bring in someone to help out, so whether that's a designer or a great photographer or both, somebody that can look at it with like clean eyes, that can bring all the elements together.
To have the vision. And this even started like when I was just doing demos in New York, and my neighbor on West 83rd Street was running a small label. And I was so young at the time. I was in my early 20s, and I'd always take my 4-track demos down the street and go, hey, listen to my demo, Mark, listen to my demo. And he'd be like, Phil, what's your vision?
Yeah.
But I was so young. I was too young to have a vision. And then when I got into my band with my co-writing partner, girlfriend, now wife, the vision formulated obviously out of our co-writes together. And then it gelled with our producer and then with our drummer, who's the professional photographer I was telling you about, Dale May, who made that imagery work.
Yeah.
Because we relinquished all creative image control to him. And we were ready for it, and that was the vision. The vision was formed.
Yeah, and thank you. I mean, you took that 100% the direction I was trying to take that. It kind of takes your bias out of it, and it gets that fresh set of eyes on it, and it allows you to do what you're really good at, which was the songwriting,
right.
And thinking about that side of things, and letting the person that was part of your group that had that creative vision go, I got it.
Yeah,
and so I think it really takes having a team, having someone that you trust, and it may take a little while before you find those people, but bringing in that expert eye to go, hey, let's use this photo or that photo. And we can even go back to this was late last year, the album by The Clash. Is it called The Call?
London Calling.
Yeah, so that image, like it's a blurry, out of focus, but that just has that raw punk rock emotion. And the photographer, the one who took the photo, was like, that's not the best photo in this bunch, but it was the photo.
Kinetic energy.
Yeah, that spoke to the music, spoke to the album and stuff like that. So yeah, it sometimes it's taking.
Can you pull that up? Can you, even if we have to take a break to get to it? I just want to see it because I can't remember. Obviously grew up with The Clash. But
yeah.
Sorry to break the flow, but it'd be cool if you could. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's like he's either going to do a Pete Townsend, Jimi Hendrix on the electric guitar, smash it, burn it.
Oh, yeah. It gets demolished. Do they have a photo of it here? Yeah.
What a great band, man. My brother and I love The Clash. What a great band.
Yeah.
So, and they were a put together group.
Really?
Yeah, you would think like, because they were just punkers when the punk scene blew up in London. And it's funny, my brother and I went to London as teenagers on a high school trip for our language club.
Yeah.
And we saw firsthand all the punkers in London. And you would think The Clash was like an organic manifestation from that time, but they were actually a put together group by a management team.
Huh. That's
Correct me if I'm wrong, but go check it out for real. I know, right?
That's pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy, and it doesn't really blow it for me though, because
Yeah.
the songs are so good. And
Yeah.
if you dig into their history a little bit, you'll be like, I don't care, dude. That's cool.
I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the Clash. I know enough to be dangerous.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, I know they were very like instrumental in that sound. I think in America, right?
Oh, huge in America, like huge for us teenagers at the time. That was all that was on MTV. So like I'm the generation, like, we got cable brought into our neighborhoods. My parents never really got it, so I'd have to go to my neighbor's house to watch MTV.
Yeah.
But you would just see the Clash on permanent rotation on MTV, and it was just the coolest music and the coolest imagery, and I don't know, man. What more can I say? They were huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think that without beating a dead horse, when it comes to photography, just make sure you're not just throwing an image out there. Make sure you're not just like looking at that image and having like your own feelings. Like, I think this is it. This is the best thing, and that it could be it. But get that second opinion. Bring someone in because it could be bigger than what you think it could be.
Yeah, and it's really it's your one shot. A lot of times we only get to make one studio album or one album where you actually have a budget, whether you're on an indie label or even no label. But in my experience anyway, you kind of have that one shot to make a great studio record. And man, shame on you if you don't make the most of your graphic design elements in your photographs.
Yeah. Yeah. So even though me personally, I probably love more of like the art pieces and stuff like that when it comes to the album cover design, but there is definitely a place for photography, and there are ways to use it and be better than a lot of what's out there.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you go to an art gallery and, you can, let's say you're in an art gallery and there's, 40 photographs. Are you going to love all 40 photographs? Probably not, but I bet you one or two you're going to stop and be like, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of maybe the process you would want to take, or the approach you'd want to take when you're vetting your own photographs. You're like, if I was in an art gallery, would this photo stop me in my tracks and make me be like, whoa, there's something going on here with this image? And how does that marry up to the music?
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree.
And I wonder now how many artists in this time of digital recording and home studio, I do know some artists put a lot of time into their art concepts, but how many people are just rushing the process?
I think a lot of them. I don't know if have you ever been on SoundCloud?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so if you go to SoundCloud or even Spotify and stuff like that, if you start getting into like the deep areas of, whether it's indie music or stuff like that, there's just a lot of music, and it could be there. Sometimes there is great music, and just the cover art is awful.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know if it was they didn't have the time or rushed it or didn't know how, and that's fine. But there's so many resources these days where you can make decent stuff, or obviously this is my podcast. I'm going to do a little shameless self promotion. I have lots of different options and packages, and even like pre-made cover art.
Sure.
That'll work with any budget.
Yeah.
You can find cover art that'll get you noticed pretty easily, and sometimes without breaking the bank.
It's first impressions. I mean, let's
Yeah.
just be real. It's your first impression. When you meet somebody, you've already made a decision whether you like them or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like you said, if you've got that one chance, why not have it be the best chance you have?
Yeah. And I just think the process is cool too,
Yeah.
because you discover so much. Like, I don't care where you are. You could be in rural somewhere up in Wyoming, or you could be in New York City. You're going to find creatives that can help you.
100%. And if you need a creative, You can go to my website, jwcreates.com.
Yep.
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. That's at jwcreates. I'd love to hear about your project. I'd love to help you out. You can even ask Phil. I've worked with Phil on a lot of different projects thus far.
Yeah.
And
we've done many now,
Yeah.
and we've got another one coming up. So I'm
Yeah.
recording some acoustic work that is going to need some kind of concept. So Josh and I are already kind of talking. I'm just sharing some spitball ideas. But I would even think maybe if you are in the midst of a project, reach out to Josh, and then maybe we could feature your final on the show.
Yeah.
And maybe even have you on the show.
Yeah, come
you know,
on.
and talk about you and your creative process and, you know, who you worked with, who was your graphic designer? Was
Yeah.
it you? Did you reach out? Who was your photographer? Did you buy stock art? Or, you know, let's hear about the music and the songwriting process, because I think it's still huge, you know, a huge art form.
Yeah. So if you are interested, reach out to us. You can get us at info@jwcreates.com. You can also reach out on social media and all that fun stuff. And get Phil back up there. Get the dose up there, man.
I like the green. I just love it. The old
this,
images.
This
it's cool.
green, I had a like an image saved on my phone that had this green color in it. And I forget what it was. It was like a poster or something like that. And I was like, I want to use that green on something.
Yeah, I remember you told me that.
Because it felt 90s. It felt grungy. It felt perfect for this project. So yeah, I love having this in the studio.
I love it, man.
So I think that's it as far as, you know, just talking about photos on album covers. So now starts the fun part. So welcome to Near Miss. So Near Miss is a segment of the show where we get to talk about album covers that are possibly not very well designed. And it's not one of those things where we're here to like bash on designers or bash on people for their creative stuff, because as a creative myself, and Phil can attest to this too, I'm sure when you put anything out there, you know, it took some courage to do so. Yeah. But this is a place for us to talk about some elements that maybe you should try and avoid if you are doing something, you know, whether it's, you know, putting music out or needing a cover art.
Yeah, we're pre-gaming it. You know, we're talking about it before you hit the field. You know, this is like the locker room for artists, you know, musicians. And don't get it straight before you have a near miss.
I like that. So today's near miss, again, isn't a specific album. It is country music and their use of photos on their album covers. So country music is notorious for their album covers, especially if it's a photo involved, looking like bad senior photos. And I've got some examples here that we'll talk about. And then Phil has some near miss photo covers that we'll also show you as well. So country music, please. We've talked about that there are creative ways to use photos as your album covers, and I don't care if we're talking 90s country, if we're talking old country, if we're talking new country. I've got a couple of them I'm going to show Phil here, and then again, hopefully in editing, we'll be able to pull those up on this. But so this album came out last year. Chris Janson is not an unknown artist. He's had some big songs hit 10 years ago, so he's been around for a while, but the outlaw side of me, Chris Janson, it just looks like
it looks like you're in your parents' basement.
Yes. Okay. So maybe it's supposed to have this like man cave feel, but it feels like it's a tiny room, and it's a really awkward pose for him.
He looks like one of those guys, the twins who do that show, like Property Brothers or something. Isn't that show with the two twins, like Drew and whatever the other?
He looks like the redneck brother.
He looks like the realtor brother, not the brother who wears the the belt tools and all the stuff and does the actual work.
So they're triplets, and this is the redneck brother.
That's the redneck brother. He looks like one of them,
and it's just like it feels poorly staged. It just. I don't know. I get the idea.
Yeah.
I get the idea behind it, but it's just like this photo.
He's like a poor man's Alan Jackson. Because Alan Jackson could make that work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's example number one.
Okay.
Example number two, Hardy. So Hardy
Wow.
has some cool imagery now. But this one, so this is This Old Boy, and I think this is his first EP that came out.
Wow, no hat too. It's strange to see him without a hat
It's
on.
strange to see him without a hat. So it looks like he's sitting in like an old diner or maybe like a dive bar or something like that with these like youth pastor glasses, a flannel.
It's almost like John Mayer's first or second album with Room for Squares. It kind of has that vibe.
Let's take a look at it real quick.
Yeah, I don't know. Just in a way, it's like, oh, your Hardy's doing like the John Mayer thing, but for, a little harder edge country.
Okay, yeah, I can see the similarities.
A little bit. See how he's sitting like that. Am I not mistaken?
But at least this is kind of cool because it's got like the boxes, like
I love
the grid.
That. Yeah.
So
that's a heck of an album too, by the way.
Is it? Yeah. I've never been a big John Mayer fan, and I don't understand why.
You know what though? He's a good songwriter.
Yeah.
Damn, he's a good songwriter.
Good guitar player too.
Just a little bit. I
mean, kinda.
Yeah, I used to get real hardcore, like, I can't stand this guy, and now I'm kind of like, bro, this guy's like a multi-platinum artist with like 18 Grammys.
I've been this guy too.
And that kind of stops me, and I'm like, Phil, come on, the guy's got some good songs. It's okay to like him a little bit.
Yeah, and so I think the font's cool, at least the Hardy portion of it.
Yeah.
But it's just like this photo, it looks like a bad senior photo. And okay, so we're not just going to pick on New Country.
But hold on, but it's going back to vision too. Like, what was the vision for the artist? Because now we know Hardy as, I look at Hardy as not this old boy. Now he's just a good old boy. he's darker.
Yeah.
He's stronger.
Metal.
Yeah. He's heavier now. He's going even heavier.
Yeah.
What was the one? This old truck, or where he's going to kill the
murder? Stay in the truck. Stay in the truck.
Stay in the truck.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. I mean, he's departed from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, this could be my nitpicking, but this was another one. Okay, so I'm not just going to nitpick on like newer country artists. Let's go to the king, George Strait.
Yeah. What the hell happened here? What fresh hell?
Okay, so we're looking at Oceanfront Property, George Strait, iconic country album. But
I'm out. I'm out. I just can't.
It's a very, very young George Strait, and again, it just kind of looks like a bad like senior photo.
I don't know, man. I think they had a lot of opportunity to maybe do something cool.
Yeah,
and then they just, I can't say this on air, but they just said, forget it.
Is it the other F word? Though?
Yeah. It's just, they just gave up. They're just kind of like, I don't know. He's talking about Arizona, oceanfront property in Arizona.
Yeah. And maybe, I forget the song. I think it's.
If I had, maybe 8 shots of whiskey in me and I was playing the album.
Yeah.
And, tripping on peyote buttons, I might be like, this is the best album. Or the cool, like he's inviting me into this world. In a way, I'll give him a little credit. He's very welcoming.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, come into this journey with me into Arizona where I sell oceanfront property.
And just so
meanwhile, he sold 1 million records.
He has sold 1 million records, and
so
it didn't.
What do I know?
Didn't necessarily mess up that, but it's just like, come on.
And who did your hair? Just asking for a friend.
And just so I'm not only picking on the guys.
Yeah.
Carrie Underwood. Everybody loves Carrie Underwood.
Do they?
Yeah. So I won't name drop, but the manager where I work, and some of you will know who this is, but he loves the Carrie Underwood Christmas album. Like, he will listen to it all year round. He loves it that much.
Wow. We got to have him on the show.
But, okay, just looking at this album cover, so we are looking at Denim and Rhinestones, Carrie Underwood. When do you think this album came out?
2005. Tell me I nailed it.
You are way off.
No, I'm not.
2022.
Yikes.
But this looks like the 2000s, doesn't it?
Are you kidding me?
I'm not. I wish I was.
2022?
I'm pretty sure. Hold on. Let's fact check me. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw.
again, what do we know? Because she's the songstress for the NFL. She's got a beautiful voice.
Yep.
She is a
June 10th, 2022. Is when
maybe
this
they're
album
trying
came
to do
out.
the retro thing. Maybe they called you, or your counterpart, and they're like,
Yeah.
"What's your vision?"
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know. We want something that's kind of like evocative of 2005.
Well, if that's what it was, they nailed it. But it's just.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like she could use that for her LinkedIn profile.
It's more like the MySpace profile.
What is this? Is this part of it?
No,
These three dots?
that's from Apple Music.
Oh,
But yeah, and so country music, please. There are creative ways to use photographs. And I guess I was going to bring this one up
just call Josh for
as
that.
an example. So Larry Fleet, he's a guy from Chattanooga. You're going to hear me talk about him a lot because I do love me
You're
some
trying
Larry
to get
Fleet.
me on the Larry Fleet, train, just like I'm on the Taylor Smith bandwagon.
If y'all haven't heard any Larry Fleet, dude, come on. And if anybody knows Larry Fleet, I'd like to have him on the show. Tell him to reach out to your brother here. Okay, so Larry Fleet, his second album is called Stack of Records. So this is a photo of Larry, but he's in this like it's almost like a old library, but it's just stacks and stacks of records all around him. He's playing his guitar. So this is a creative use of a photograph to capture the idea, the essence of what this album, and it's basically the essence is that, he grew up with all these different albums and artists and music, and like it shaped who he's was.
Honoring that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they captured that in this image.
Agreed.
And also whoever the designer was, and I'd love to look into it a little bit more, did awesome with the font and just the coloring and stuff like that.
The way it's kind of wrapped here.
Yeah.
I love it too.
Yeah. So again, this is a photograph. It can be done. I know that there are artists in country music that are, that are using photographs for their album covers that are getting it. But man, most of them, like across the board, they look like bad senior photos. And if we could just stop that, that would be fantastic.
You're talking about is it his name Joe Nichols or something? Like he has a lot where you're in a denim shirt and you kind of look like a Dukes of Hazzard / senior photo shoot.
Yeah, 100%.
But hey, Larry's got the beard, man.
Dude, it's an epic beard.
That's almost like some kind of Amish or Mennonite beard.
It's getting there. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of my rant for this near miss segment.
Yeah.
And sorry, country music. I love you. I love country music. It's what I grew up on.
I like country music.
I'll get you on the bandwagon.
Okay.
All right. Enough from me. What do you got, Phil? You brought some actual physical things. So let's get this guy out of the way.
I'll just, we all love John Denver. I mean, what a sweetheart. Such a good songwriter, and like every other wedding you go to, they're playing Annie's song. So good. Just so good. And the guy just magic on the guitar, and may he rest in peace. What a great artist who shared so much. But, he had like his 12-year-old nephew take a Kodak photo of him on a rock in the river. And it's like, okay, I think we're good.
You may have to fact check us on this one because I don't know that that's correct.
His girlfriend who was.
It looks like it, right?
It's just like, John, go stand on that rock, and I'm gonna take
He might have been Rocky Mountain High when they took this photo.
I could be. I mean, even show him the back of it.
Yeah, even the back, and it's kind of
whimsical.
It's kind of a candid photo.
It sucks. It sucks.
Because this is a pretty big album, right?
Huge.
I was
just
little
rattle
young
off a couple titles.
Yeah, so Rocky Mountain High, Paradise, Darcy Farrow, Mother Nature's Son, Goodbye Again. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, I'm a little young for the John Denver, heyday, but I understand why he was as big as he was. But yes,
huge.
Sorry, John.
Yeah,
maybe not the best.
He had the songs, but maybe he just didn't have a buddy that could hook him up with a good photographer. I don't know. We're just playing around.
Yeah,
here. John's a great artist.
Does this have 1972?
Holy smokes! Wow. That was a long time ago. All right, you want to do one more?
Yeah, throw one more up there.
This is a band from Athens, Georgia called REM. And this, I don't think it was like their first release, but this is like their first maybe commercial EP called Chronic Town that came out. And I mean, maybe, so you have a gargoyle on the front, interesting font, kind of like a New Times Roman font. And I think that the two-tone is kind of cool.
Mhm.
Is that right? Would you call it a two-tone?
I'd call it a two-tone, yeah, with the black and the kind of
yeah, it's cool. And then on the back, you see the guys. But I think what happens with a near miss like this, over time, you fall in love with it because now I love all the songs on this album. I just love the songs; they're great. And now when I look at that album cover, it gives me a great warm and fuzzy feeling. So I don't know. I mean, it's contemplative when, you don't really think of gargoyles that much. I don't know why they put the gargoyle on there.
Is it like heavy and dark? I guess I don't know REM.
No, they're more like, I don't want to say navel gazing, but very, Michael Stipe had navel gazers. Michael Stipe is a poet. He's a poet, and I'd say very introspective, contemplative lyrics that are obscure and abstract. It's almost like when he sings, it's kind of like he's making a maze or something. You're not quite sure what he's talking about, but he evokes a great emotion. And then the rest of the band, like Peter Buck, his guitar player, is fantastic. Yeah. But I love the album. Is it the best? I don't know who came up with this. They were on a major label, IRS Records, which is defunct now, but kind of cool, but it was a college-y kind of record too.
Yeah. I think I may stand up for him a little bit, even though yes, this is a little bit weird. Like this shot on the back's pretty cool though.
I do think that's cool. Yeah, and I like the way Michael Stipe's like looking at the rest of the band.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's
like,
fun.
What the heck, guys?
Yeah, and maybe there's something to it as well where you're not like overthinking it. You're like, dude, let's get the photo done, get the album out, and we're going to hop in the van and we're going to tour for the next year. And that's what these guys did. And they killed it.
Huh. Come on. So that is photos on album covers. So we covered a lot. I think the biggest takeaway is get creative with it. Don't just do the senior portrait looking photo, unless for some reason you're going for that look. Yeah. And then maybe it'll be okay. Get creative with it. Find somebody to work with, whether that is a good photographer, a good graphic designer, or maybe if you don't necessarily have that, maybe bring in a friend or somebody that has a good eye for stuff and just get a second opinion on things.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. So, you have any last thoughts on the subject, Phil?
Just like, I was talking to you about like the vision and what's my vision, and I didn't know what a vision was when I was a young artist. And, maybe just talk about what's your vision? Like, why are you writing this music? Or, get down to the root of it, and maybe you'll come up with something really cool.
Yeah. So kind of look at it as a whole. Like, what story are you trying to tell? What are you trying to get the people listening to either feel or see or think?
Yeah.
Try and think, outside of the box and kind of bring those elements in. And I think you'll find that maybe your first thought for it isn't exactly what you thought it would be.
Yeah.
So anyway, hope you guys liked it. If you have suggestions of albums to either just talk about on the podcast, or if it's something where you think it would be a good subject for our near miss segment, reach out to us. So that's info@jwcreates.com. You can send us an email there. You can also reach out on social media. That's at JDUB Creates. That's on Facebook and Instagram. And then also, we love reviews. So reviews are awesome. It helps us grow the show, helps people find us. So if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you go and hit that 5-star, hit us up, let us know what you like about the show. And then also that's an area where you can tell us maybe a suggestion you have. And then also, if you are watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe, hit the like, do all the things. All the things.
Thank you.
Those help. So so for me and Phil, we say thank you for joining us on this episode of the Judge by the Cover podcast, and we will see you next month with another episode.
proud member of the Podnuga Network.